Minister Lawrence Wong.
Mr. Chairman, I thank members for their comments and interest in MND matters. MND's mission is to plan and build our city and home. It's a major undertaking and responsibility that spans not just 1 or 2 years, but multiple years and even decades. The Singapore we have today is the result of hard work by those who came before us. They master planned our whole city, revamped our city centre, developed our housing estates. Now it's our turn to take Singapore forward. We must build a better Singapore for our children and future generations. We must plant the trees for them so that they can enjoy the shade. And we have a tremendous opportunity ahead of us to do this. In his budget speech, Minister Heng Swee Keat shared the vision for Singapore to be a global Asia node of technology, innovation, and enterprise. And there was broad support in this House for this vision. Mr. Lau himself affirmed this in his speech during the budget debate. So we have to work hard now to make this vision a reality. There are many aspects to this work, but a major part of it is to build the infrastructure for our future Singapore. And that's why we have a major pipeline of projects over the coming decade. And sir, with your permission, may I display some slides on the LED screens? We have projects all over Singapore. Changi Airport T5 in the east, Tuas Megaport in the west. We have Jurong Lake District and the high-speed rail, Woodlands, and the RTS with Johor, and the Punggol Digital District. All of these projects will be coming on stream over the coming decade, and they will help to strengthen our air, sea, and land links. They will also help to strengthen our digital connections so that Singapore can be a more connected hub for the region, so that our city can be more vibrant and more attractive to investments and talent. More importantly, they will make Singapore a better home for our children and our future generations. To achieve these goals, our first priority is home ownership for Singaporeans. Because when you own a home, you have a stronger stake in the nation and a greater sense of belonging. And this is why home ownership remains a key pillar of our nation-building efforts, as Mr. Alex Yam highlighted, and the government remains firmly committed to providing affordable and quality homes for Singaporeans. Members will recall how we had ramped up flat supply, HDB flat supply in 2011. We launched almost 25,000 BTO flats per year and cleared the backlog at that time. And since then, we've been tapering the supply of new HDB flats. But we have tapered in a gentle way to ensure that there's sufficient supply. So we offered over 17,000 BTO flats last year, and we will continue to maintain a steady supply this year. At the same time, we are watching the numbers carefully to ensure a balance in demand and supply for the longer term to maintain a stable and sustainable property market. Besides ensuring adequate supply, we remain committed to keeping prices affordable by pricing new flats below the market rate and having a generous subsidy in them. One couple who have benefited is Mr. Muhammad Fadli bin Nordin and his wife, Madam Siti Diana. They applied for a 4-room BTO flat in Woodlands, received $15,000 in grants. This is on top of the subsidized price. And the monthly installments for the loan is fully paid for using CPF. So no out-of-pocket cash, zero. Everything paid for in CPF. While waiting for their flat to be completed, they moved into a PPHS flat, Provisional Parenthood Housing Scheme. They benefited from the reduced PPHS rents last year, paying $900 instead of $1,100 per month. They gave birth to a baby girl in the PPHS flat. They moved into their home in July last year, their new flat, and we are very happy that they have just welcomed their second daughter last week. We want to do more to help young couples like them with their first home. And this is why we launched BTO flats with a shortened waiting time. Not by compressing the construction, but by bringing it forward. So we built ahead, and therefore the waiting time for the couples is shorter. HDB will launch the first batch of 1,100 such flats in Sembawang, Sengkang, and Yishun this year. And I'm happy to announce that we will double the number of such flats in 2019, another 2,000 flats. The waiting time for these flats is around 2 to 3 years, as opposed to the normal waiting time of about 3 to 4 years. Mr. Gantiampo suggested to further reduce the waiting time. We will do our best and study how to do this, but please understand that it's not possible for us to do this for all flats, as some sites are just not ready for us to bring forward the construction. It's physically not possible for HDB to produce instant flats to meet all of the demand. So one way for those with more urgent needs is to buy from the resale market. And that's why we have taken steps to enhance the grants for resale flats. We enhanced the CPF housing grants for resale flats last year. We introduced the proximity housing grant in 2015 to help families live closer together. And this year we enhanced the proximity housing grant. Taken together with all the different grants, when you take all the different grants together, first-timer families can now receive up to $120,000 in grants when buying a resale flat. And that's a 50% increase compared to 3 years ago. And so not surprisingly, we are seeing more first-timer families purchasing from the resale market, and I expect this to continue. There are also some young couples who decide to settle down early, sometimes when they're still completing their studies, perhaps when the males are still performing their national service. Take the example of Mr. Gerald Sim and Ms. Stephanie Mock. Stephanie has just graduated. Gerald is still studying because he had to do his NS, so he's still studying. They are a young couple who have decided to settle down and would like to get married. In fact, they had been planning to buy a BTO flat since last year. But because Stephanie only started working in August last year, she didn't have sufficient period of employment to apply for the flat. Young couples like them may find themselves delaying their flat application for 1 or 2 years, and then waiting another 4 years for the flat to be ready. I think that's a bit too long a wait. Buying a flat is a serious commitment, but for young couples who have considered it carefully, I think we can exercise some flexibility to support them in their marriage and parenthood journey. So we will now allow such couples to apply for the flat first and defer the assessment of income for housing loans and grants till just before key collection. For example, if a young couple wants to settle down early and are confident that they can finance the purchase of the flat, they apply for the flat first. They only need to pay half the down payment. This is already possible today. We allow them to pay half the down payment. The remaining half is paid closer to key collection. The flat would typically take up to 4 years to build. So during that period, the couple can have time to build up their finances. And just before key collection, we will assess their income for purposes of determining the loan quantum and housing grants that they are eligible for. This deferred assessment of income will apply to eligible couples from the May sales BTO and sales of balance flat exercise. We are also studying how we can further streamline processes to make buying a HDB flat much quicker and easier. I think the comments that Engineer Dr. Lee Biwa made. And in fact, we have already made several moves on this front. HDB has revamped the resale portal. All the eligibility checks are now done on one single platform. We cut down the appointment from 2 to 1, and as a result, the application time is reduced from 16 weeks to 8 weeks. We have also made changes to our sales process, and we started with the reoffer of balance flats last year. Under the reoffer of balance flats, or ROF, all the unselected balance flats are pooled together in one common pool. They are not sorted out by flat types or by towns. So applicants are put on a single queue, and based on the queue number, they can choose any ROF unit that's available. And by doing so, we were able to shorten the flat selection process. A typical sales of balance flat exercise, as Engineer Dr. Lee mentioned, takes about 8 months. It sounds very long, I can understand, but please understand in a typical sales of balance flat exercises of balance flats, there are more than 100 different flat types, more than 100 different and various estates. So you have more than 100 different queues to manage. But with the ROF, we have one single queue because all of the balance flats are pooled together. So because of that, we were able to shorten the flat selection process from 8 months to 6 months. Our inaugural ROF exercise in August last year was a success, with more than 90% of the flats on offer being taken up. And just 6 months after the launch, about 400 families have already collected the keys to their new homes. So we will continue to learn from this experience to see how we can improve. Another area that we are looking at is the balloting process for BTO flats. This used to be much simpler and faster in the past. The applicants would attend a balloting ceremony. There are 2 bowls in front. The MP will draw out 2 pieces of paper, one with the applicant's sales registration number, the other with a house number, and they match, and this is it. After they get this, behind the scenes, sometimes they swap, because if you don't like it, you can go and swap, but that happens without our knowledge. But this is a simple process that used to happen in the past. This is Mr. Puabali doing it in the past. And this is how we used to do it. It was simple, it was possible, because the number of flats and applicants were much smaller. Today, HDB serves more than 50,000 flat applicants annually. It has to manage across different priority schemes with ethnic quotas to administer. So as a result, it takes about 6 weeks to work through the entire balloting process. HDB has to check the applicant's eligibility, sort out the requirements of the various schemes and quotas, and ultimately ensure that the ballot is fair. Still, I think the time taken can be reduced. So I've challenged the HDB team to see if we can halve the balloting time from 6 weeks to 3 weeks. HDB has taken on this challenge, and they are working through the processes, and I hope they will be able to announce some good news before too long. We are also very mindful that children and parents would like to live near one another to provide mutual care and support. That's something that we want to encourage. And so HDB offers various priority schemes. For example, the Married Child Priority Scheme, the Multi-Generation Priority Scheme, and Senior Priority Scheme. These all help give priority to families to live closer together. Mr. Gan Tiampo also suggested building larger flats so that families with more children can stay together. That's indeed why we introduced 3-gen flats in 2013, and they have been very well received by home buyers. Mr. Gan and Mr. Chong Ki-Hiong suggested increasing the supply of 3-gen flats. So far, there is sufficient supply to meet demand, but we are monitoring the application rates closely, and if need be, we are prepared to build more. Of course, there is also the proximity housing grant, which I mentioned earlier, to help families stay together and live near one another. And besides enhancing the grant quantum this year, we've simplified the proximity condition as well to a distance-based one, within 4 kilometers. This will apply to both the PHG for resale flats as well as a proximity-based scheme for new flats, like the Married Child Priority Scheme, as well as the Senior Priority Scheme, which I mentioned earlier, from the May sales exercise. And this will give home buyers more choices of flats in neighboring towns. I'm very glad to see very strong support from members for our efforts to encourage families to live closer together. And through all the schemes that we have, we look forward to seeing more families buy flats to live together or near one another for mutual support. While we help couples and families to settle down, we are also mindful that there's a diverse range of home buyers. There are second-timers, elderly looking to right-size, singles, divorcees, and single unwed parents, so groups that various members have talked about. For second-timers, some face difficulties paying the resale levy. For those with difficulties, we are prepared to look at them and incorporate the levy into the purchase price. Many of them who are second-timers are also looking to get the flat urgently. And in fact, for them, the better option is really to consider the resale market. The proximity housing grant can help in this respect because that grant is available to second-timers too. So even if it's a second-timer, you buy from the resale market, first of all, there is no resale levy to pay, but secondly, they get the grant to purchase the resale flat. For those in rental, we have put in place a new Fresh Start scheme to support them in their home ownership journey. For the elderly, I touched on this in last year's COS. We have many schemes to help them. We have built 2-room flexi flats for them. Again, they are priced with a significant subsidy to make sure that they are affordable. For first-timers, they too are eligible for a grant, which will make the 2-room flexi flats very affordable for them. For second-timers, there is a levy to be paid, but we have kept the levy amount and adjusted it for the shorter lease. So the maximum levy that would be paid on a 2-room flexi on 45-year lease is $18,000, much lower than what a normal resale levy would be. We have also made other enhancements last year, including deferring the down payment till key collection for the elderly when they right size, providing a temporary loan, one-to-one counseling, and an elderly priority queue at the HDB hub. All these measures have helped, and we will continue to see what more we can do to support our elderly. For the singles, that's another group that many members talked about, Engineer Dr. Lee Biwa, Mr. Gan Tian Po, Mr. Alex Yam. So far, more than 12,000 singles have bought new two-room flats. The application rates are still high. I recognize that, and we are doing our best to build more two-room flats to clear the backlog. Singles can also consider resale flats. Over the last 5 years, 27,000 have bought resale flats, more than the ones who have bought new flats. And again, the enhancements to the proximity housing grant will make this a more attractive option, because with the changes to the proximity grant, as members here have recognized, we are giving a higher grant of 15,000 for singles who buy a resale flat to live with their parents, and now they are eligible also for a 10,000 grant to buy a resale flat near their parents. I hope this will provide more options to singles in the resale market. And again, taken together with all the other housing grants, singles may now receive up to $60,000 in grants to buy a resale flat. Mr. Alex Yam asked about the minimum age of 35 for singles to buy HDB flats. He mentioned that Singaporeans are marrying later, but the marriage rates are still high among singles under the age of 35. So I would say, I think the age of 35 is still valid today. In any case, as I mentioned earlier, we still have a backlog to clear. And I think we should focus on that and make sure that those who are on the queue, we build enough two-room flats to help them get the two-room flats first. Another group that many members talked about are divorcees. Several asked if we can help them make a smoother housing transition, especially for the benefit of their children. Mr. Chairman, we recognize that divorce can be a stressful and emotional period and a complex process with many decisions to be made. HDB provides advice to families on their post-divorce housing options to make this housing transition smoother. We help them purchase a BTO flat through the ASSIST scheme, the Assistance Scheme for Second-Timers, where they get priority when applying for a two-room or three-room BTO flat in a non-mature estate. In the interim, before the flat is ready, they can rent a subsidized flat from HDB under the PPHS. And HDB also offers rental housing to those in need, including those who may need help to tide over a protracted or acrimonious divorce. One issue that divorcees may face is the time bar for the purchase of subsidized flats. I think Mr. Louis Ng mentioned this just now. This is a rule put in place since 1997, whereby during the time bar, a divorced couple can only own one subsidized flat between them. So both sides have to agree on who should be allowed to buy the subsidized flat. This is what we call the mutual consent agreement or requirement. The mutual consent the time bar was set at 5 years initially, and then we've reduced it to 3 years. Since 2012, we have waived the mutual consent requirement for the parent with sole care and control of young children to buy a subsidized flat in order to prioritize their housing needs. This has helped the majority of divorced couples with children, but there are still others still subject to the time bar. So we have reviewed the matter, and we have decided to remove the time bar completely. We hope that this will help divorced persons provide a more conducive living environment for their children and go some way to help families through an already difficult period of transition. We will continue to do our best to help these and other groups, including single unwed parents with children. We already exercise considerable flexibility for such appeals, as I've elaborated upon in previous sessions, and we will continue to do so. We look at each case carefully and consider what's in the best interest of the child, and if necessary, we will assist the parents or the parent and child in purchasing a flat. SMS Ko Po Kun will elaborate on how else MND is helping families in transition and various vulnerable groups. Besides upholding home ownership, we must continuously look at ways to improve the way we build our future Singapore. Poorly designed cities can easily become a high-rise concrete jungle. You get all the problems associated with rapid urbanization, crowding, and social fragmentation. The city becomes a stressful and alienating place to live and work in. But at their best, Modern cities with well-designed buildings and neighborhoods can connect people and improve our well-being. So we must innovate and explore new ways of building to achieve even better results. One important shift is to push for higher quality and higher productivity in construction. It's especially crucial given the major pipeline of projects that are coming up in the decade. We have embarked on many programs to do this, and we have rolled out an industry transformation map. So Second Minister Desmond Lee will share more about this in his speech later. For my part, I would like to touch on two important areas. First, how can we build a more inclusive Singapore? Earlier in the budget debate, several members talked about the importance of addressing inequality, bridging social divides, and enhancing social integration. I think everyone here recognizes that it's a complex issue that involves multiple strategies on both the economic and social front. Our urban and living environment also has a part to play to bring residents of diverse backgrounds together, promote social integration, and uplift the lower income. So how can our built environment help to foster a more inclusive Singapore? I have a few suggestions, and these are areas that we are working on. First, we must improve the way we design our buildings and public facilities. We are going for universal design. That means designing for people of all ages and all abilities, both young and old, expectant mothers, as well as persons with special needs. BCA publishes guidebooks and develops standards for universal design, disseminates them to the industry, and in fact, our efforts have received recognition from outside parties, including from the United Nations, which praised Singapore for our user-friendly built environment. We will continue to do more. BCA is looking at raising the bar further as part of our review of the Accessibility Master Plan and Accessibility Code. And we will be engaging stakeholders, including public users, in this process. We will pay special attention to the elderly, given our rapidly aging population. All HDB estates are now barrier-free, and we will see how we can further improve. We have been upgrading lifts in HDB blocks to provide direct lift access to households and incorporating elderly-friendly designs in our flats and estates. We also have the Enhancement for Active Seniors, or EASE program, to provide subsidized installation of fittings for our seniors, be it grab bars or anti-slip treatment to their bathroom tiles. Mr. Darrell David asked about the government's plans for the EASE program. We are studying what more we can do under EASE. And one particular item that we are looking at is to include assistance for those living in flats with multi-step entrances. And we will provide an update on this later this year. Several members also asked if we can enhance the designs of our flats to support our elderly. We've been looking at this, and we've introduced better designs for elderly-friendly estate and flats. One recent example is Kampong Admiralty. Within this area, HDB flats for seniors are integrated with a continuum of social and health services. So the residents have easy access to all the services under one roof. The feedback from the residents who have moved into Kampong Admiralty is very positive, and we will study how this can be implemented in other areas as well. Beyond better integration, we will go further by exploring assisted living. Assisted living is a model of living that integrates home and care. For example, within one block or even on the same floor, you can have individual apartment units together with shared communal facilities for dining, for social activities, and a range of elder care services. So HDB will be working with MOH to pilot assisted living in public housing. We envisage a collaborative model where HDB will design and build the flat, and we will have to tap on private expertise to provide the services. So we will pilot this in HDB flats, and we will also study ways in which this can be done in private developments. So that's our first point on making the future Singapore more inclusive in the way we design our buildings. The second area is to ensure that our housing estates continue to have common spaces, public parks, and greenery for all to enjoy. Several members also spoke about this. It's critical, especially in our compact, high-rise living environment. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew started this with the push to make Singapore a garden city. When we spoke to him in 2012, and asked him what more should we do to take Singapore forward. This is what he said, and I quote, "Singapore must retain the sense of space. We are going to build taller buildings, but we can't build them closely together. There must be a sense of playing fields and recreational areas for children and old people. A sense that this is a full country with all the facilities which you expect of a large country, but in a confined space." This is the challenge that our planners have, and they are very conscious of this. It's reflected in the way we design our HDB estates. The planners have a difficult job. They don't always have a large greenfield site to work with. Some sites come with constraints and they have to work around these constraints. They may not get everything perfectly right, but we take in feedback, as many have shared, and we will continue to improve our designs for new estates. For existing estates, we also have programs to rejuvenate our estates, existing ones, to keep them vibrant and livable. At the town level, our Remaking of Heartlands initiative has covered 9 HDB towns and estates. We recently unveiled plans for Toa Payoh, Woodlands, and Pasir Ris for public consultation, and we will finalize the plans later this year and start works thereafter. At the precinct level, we have the Neighbourhood Renewal Program, NRP, for our older estates built up to 1995. We typically select about 14 NRP projects a year, and I'm happy to announce that this year we will increase the number and launch 20 NRP projects across the island. It's part of our efforts to provide support for the construction industry. So we are bringing forward projects, particularly to help the industry during this period. At the flat level, we have the Home Improvement Program, which several members highlighted. This is for flats built up to 1986. We will finish selection of the existing eligible flats by the end of this year, and we expect works to be progressively completed around 2022. Several members have asked about expanding the scope of HIP, extending it to flats built after the existing cohort. And as I've shared in this House previously, any upgrading program is a major commitment that spans many years and would cost billions of dollars. We've just had a major debate on the budget about fiscal sustainability and how government spending is rising sharply and how we need to raise revenues to meet these future needs. So we are studying this possible, any future upgrading program has to be studied very carefully in this context. So we are studying this very carefully. Eventually, when the proposals are put forward, I hope members will support more resources for M&D to do upgrading in existing estates as well. So that's our second area where we want to make sure that our estates have common spaces, parks, greenery that all can access and enjoy. Thirdly, we can also facilitate more social interactions within the block itself. We already have the ethnic integration policy to ensure a better racial mix. We also try to mix different unit types within the same block, something which several members spoke about. For example, in the past, we would build standalone studio apartments. Now, all 2-room flexi flats launched are integrated with other flat types within the same block. For rental flats, likewise, these are the same considerations when we build rental flats. We try not to cluster too many rental flats together, but we build them together with sold flats in the same neighborhood so that residents can share and access the same communal facilities and amenities. More recently, we've also launched 3 BTO projects with rental and sold flats within the same block itself. This is in Woodlands, Bukit Batok, and Sengkang. The flats are still under construction, but we will learn from this experience, get feedback about the lived experience in these flats, and if it's positive, we will certainly want to do more. Importantly, it's also about how you design the block to maximize opportunities for social interaction. And some of these things I would acknowledge happen more through serendipity than deliberate design. I give an example of how in the past, we didn't have lifts on every floor. So the lift landing somehow became a place where neighbors would get to meet one another. I say this from personal experience because my HDB apartment was on the 21st floor on a lift landing, just next to the lift. And so the neighbors come and we get to meet them all the time, and you can have a chance to talk to them. Today, lift landings are on every floor, so you don't have as many opportunities for interaction. It's meant for barrier-free access. I think it's a good thing, but you don't have that many opportunities to meet. So we have to use other design methods to encourage neighborly interaction. And that's why in some of the new BTO flats, for example, in Dawson, HDB has tried out more seating areas in common spaces near lift lobbies. We are trying out more greenery, more rooftop spaces for residents to get together. These are different designs that are being piloted, that we are trying out. Again, it's something that we have to learn by doing, and from the experiences and feedback that we get, we can improve for each new project that we embark on. So one major thrust in how we want to build our future Singapore is to make sure that we are more inclusive. Another major emphasis in the way we build for the future is to make sure we have a more distinctive Singapore. We cannot just be another modern city, one amongst many in the world. We have to be a city that stands out. Stand out not by having the biggest, tallest, or fanciest building, but through our distinctive character and culture, our heritage and identity. And this means capitalizing on our strengths, our city in a garden, our clean and safe environment, our multicultural diversity and heritage. Part of our shared memories is captured in our buildings. So we are indeed paying more attention to heritage elements in our planning process, as highlighted by Mr. Alex Yam. Buildings with historical significance will be preserved or conserved and repurposed for other uses, as we have done with some of the buildings like the former Supreme Court and City Hall. Some old buildings may have to go, but even in doing so, we can find ways to preserve the memories of the place. This is the approach we took for Dakota Crescent. We have heard the many calls for the place to be kept. There was a ground-up initiative by several architects to do this. Mr. Lim Biao Chuan spoke about this in Parliament. So we've considered the feedback, and in December last year, we announced that the central cluster of 6 buildings around the courtyard will be kept and repurposed. And that includes the Dorf Playground, which I think many have fond memories of. Such efforts demonstrate that it is possible for us to combine both old and new to bring out what is distinctively Singaporean. And this is what we will do also for the rail corridor. It is a unique space where we can celebrate our heritage, our culture, and biodiversity. And it will connect close to 1 million Singaporeans. So we are reviewing our plans around the corridor, as Ms. Loh Yan Ling had suggested, to see how we can best make use of this unique space. And I agree with Ms. Loh that it's important for the rail corridor to remain accessible to all Singaporeans. We've been working closely on this project with the community, anchored by the Friends of the Rail Corridor, comprising residents, students, and nature and heritage groups. For a start, we are working on the central 4-kilometer stretch of the rail corridor, and which is based on the public feedback. We will transform the conserved Bukit Timah railway station into a vibrant community node with amenities, open spaces, as well as a heritage gallery. As enhancement works for this central 4-kilometer stretch commence later this year, we will also improve accessibility to the rail corridor from adjacent developments like homes, schools, workplaces, and transport nodes, including having new access paths in the nearby Hillview neighborhood. And in parallel, we will implement trail improvement works along other stretches of the rail corridor this year, so that virtually the entire stretch of the rail corridor will be connected seamlessly. You can walk, run, and cycle along the entire 24-kilometer stretch by 2021. The rail corridor will also serve as a gateway to parks and trails island-wide. It will intersect with the upcoming Coast to Coast Trail, which will span across Singapore from Jurong Lake Gardens in the west to Coney Island in the northeast, and it will have convenient access to nature parks around the Bukit Timah and Central Catchment Nature Reserves. It will connect to the Round Island route, which is the 150-kilometer continuous green trail which loops around the entire island. So even as we embark on our next phase of development, we are committed to enhancing our city in the garden and making Singapore an even greener and more beautiful home for all to enjoy. Mr. Chairman, I've shared our plans for our future city and home. To achieve these bold plans, we need to work together. The government cannot do this alone. We are building up capabilities, not just within government, but also, as Mr. Alex Yam said, amongst our architects, engineers, consultants, builders. But I agree with Mr. Darrell David that the government needs to partner the community, interest groups, businesses, and industries in building our future city. And we can start with our neighborhoods. There are many opportunities to co-create the common spaces in our HDB towns. Recently, we launched a pilot in Sembawang called Build a Playground. You know, we build new playgrounds all the time. All of us see this in our estates. But this one was different. We spent time engaging the residents. They worked together on the project, from the conceptualization to the design to even the final assembly of the playground on site. It took longer than usual. About 2 years to build this playground. I mean, this is much longer than what a normal time it would take to build a playground. But the end result was worth it. Residents shared that they love the project, they take pride in it, and because they take ownership of the playground, they were involved in it, they appreciate and enjoy it much more. So this is a meaningful way to shape our common spaces together, and we hope to do more of this in other estates too. We want to enable such ground-up initiatives to shape our neighborhoods. HDB already provides support for residents to activate their community spaces, and we hope that more will take up the funding support from HDB. One example is a project titled Welcome to Our Backyard. It was led by residents and volunteers in Aljunied Crescent. So you can see the before and after pictures of what this was before, an empty grass patch. And because of the community involvement, they took ownership of it, they transformed it into a warm, welcoming backyard with swings and mini gardens. Besides our neighborhoods, we have also supported many community-initiated projects in our public spaces all over Singapore. Last year, a group of stakeholders in Kampong Glam had an idea to spruce up a small park at Sultan Gate. With URA support, they installed park benches, picnic tables, lighting, and even a giant swing. And so now there's a cozy spot for the public to gather and interact. These are just two examples of the wonderful things that can happen when everybody takes ownership of the places we live and work in, and we shape our urban landscape together. There is tremendous potential for all of us to do more together. So as a nation of homeowners, we all have a part to play in shaping our future city and home. In the last 50 years, we've transformed from mudflat to metropolis. So let's now work on our next lap of urban transformation to be a green, smart, and livable city, to be a vibrant global city that's inclusive and that's distinctively Singaporean, a place we are all proud to call home. Thank you.